Morning.
Friends, good evening. Hi, everybody.
Yes, Miss Sue.
Thanks for coming.
明阳，老师没有看见你转过来。对 ，Hi Miss Sue.
Miss Sue,
Hey.
tomorrow gonna be on Friday gonna be the last day.
明阳的被窝。
Sorry, can you believe it? Gone by
要
quickly.
水，要水。
好的，妈妈去拿水。
Gone by really quickly.
Yeah. Who's that?
Just 3 more chapters after tonight's chapter. 1 more night. That's right.
Baby.
Right. Wow. Leah, don't feel so cozy. It looks like you're gonna fall asleep. You look very warm. All right, let's see here. Hi, Vera. How are you?
这是麦克的朋友。
Oh, you sent me a picture. I mean, you sent me a message. Thank you. Hello, Olivia. Nice to see you. All right. Cold and rainy day today. I'm glad to be inside.
To everyone.
妈妈，
Vera gave me a thumbs up, which means you must agree. Is that right, Vera? What
look.
did you make? Is it a little like dollhouse inside of a box? What kind of doll is it for? Is it for like a little animal toy or a little person? Oh, it's for a little duck?
有点奇怪。
How cute is that? I love it. I made one of those when I was young too, but it was just flowers and grass. I didn't actually put furniture. But my sister had one for her little puppies. She had these little puppy toys and she had this whole little house for it. She let me play with hers. It's great to see everybody tonight. All right, well,
2 stairs.
it has.
One for the bed.
Did you make that all by yourself?
Yes.
Wow. What a wonderful creative project. Yeah. Hi, Rachel. Nice to see you. I miss you, Rachel. I hope you're doing well. And I miss Ethan too. Oh, sorry. I can't. Can you hear? Can I unmute you, Rachel? Rachel, are you doing well? Are you okay, Rachel? What about Ethan? Is Ethan all right? I haven't seen him for a long time. I hope the answer is yes. All right. Let's see here. My mom's here. Hi, Mom. I'm gonna spotlight you. Good morning, Mom. Can you see us, Mom? I think her connection isn't so good.
Oh, maybe you can see Sue's mom today.
But yes, she's here, but I think she isn't working.
So I'm not happy because
What? Because being at home?
Because you're quarantined. 被关在
Yes.
家里了吗？
I'm not happy for the same reason, Rachel. I understand. Trust me. 我非常理解你，真的。Okay. That's okay. Good morning, Mom. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here. I guess she can't hear me. The connection's not too good. All right, friends. Well, thank you so much for coming. And it's already time to start reading chapter 12.
Why you?
Chapter 12. Actually, no, not chapter 12. We're going to finish with chapter 12 tonight. We're going to start on chapter 10 tonight. All right, so it's time for me to mute everybody. And let's begin. Pull up my PPT. And just like usual, if you'd like to add, or if you'd like to scan into the group where I put the recordings, you may do that, or if your parents would like to. All right. So feel free to scan in. If you need to, I'll give you a few seconds. All right. Let's go ahead and begin. Chapter 10 of Stuart Little. This chapter is called Springtime. Snowbell, the cat, enjoyed nighttime more than daytime. Perhaps it was because his eyes liked the dark. But I think it was because there are always so many worthwhile things going on in New York at night. Snowbell had several friends in the neighborhood. Some of them were house cats, others were store cats. He knew a Maltese cat in the A&P and a white Persian in the apartment house next door, a tortoiseshell in the delicatessen, a tiger cat in the basement of the branch library, and a beautiful young Angora who had escaped from a cage in a pet shop on 3rd Avenue and had gone to live in a free life of her own in the tool house of a small park near the Stuart's home. One fine spring evening, Snowbell had been calling on the Angora in the park. He started home late, and it was such a lovely night. She said she would walk along with him to keep him company. When they got to Mr. Little's house, the two cats sat down at the foot of a tall vine which ran up the side of the house past George's bedroom. This vine was useful to Snowbell because he could climb it at night and crawl into the house through George's open window. Snowbell began telling his friend about Margalo and Stuart. "Goodness," said the Angora cat, "you mean to say you live in the same house with a bird and a mouse and don't do anything about it?" "That's the situation," replied Snowbell. "But what can I do about it? Please remember that Stuart is a member of the family and the bird is a permanent guest like myself." "Well," said Snowbell's friend, "all I can say is, you've got more self-control than I have." "Doubtless," said Snowbell. "However, I sometimes think I've got too much self-control for my own good. I've been terribly nervous and upset lately, and I think it's because I'm always holding myself in." The cats' voices grew louder, and they talked so loudly that they never heard a slight rustling in the vine a few feet above their heads. It was a gray pigeon who had been asleep there and who had awakened at the sound of the cats and begun to listen. "This sounds like an interesting conversation," said the pigeon to himself. "Maybe I'd better stay around and see if I can learn something." See in the picture here? Here's the pigeon asleep in the trees, the leaves of the vine on that wall above the cats, and he can hear what they're saying. "Look here," he heard the Angora cat say to Snowbell. "I admit that a cat has a duty toward her people, and that under the circumstances it would be wrong for you to eat Margalo. But I'm not a member of your family, and there is nothing to stop me from eating her, is there?" "Nothing that I can think of offhand," said Snowbell. "Then here I go," said the Angora, starting up the vine. The pigeon was wide awake by this time, ready to fly away, but the voices down below continued. "Wait a minute," said Snowbell. "Don't be in such a hurry. I don't think you'd better go in there tonight." "Why not?" asked the other cat. "Well, for one thing, you're not supposed to enter our house. I don't think you'd better go in there tonight." "I won't get in any trouble," said the Angora. Please wait till tomorrow night, said Snowbell firmly. Mr. and Mrs. Little will be going out tomorrow night, and you won't be taking such a risk. It's for your own good I'm suggesting this. Oh, all right, agreed the Angora. I guess I can wait. But tell me where I find the bird after I do get in. That's simple, said Snowbell. Climb this vine, enter George's room through the open window. Then go downstairs and you'll find the bird asleep in the Boston fern on the bookcase. Easy enough, said the Angora, licking her chops. I'm obliged to you, sir. Well, the old thing, whispered the pigeon to himself, flew away quickly to find a piece of writing paper and a pencil. Snowbell said good night to his friend and climbed up the vine and went into bed. Next morning, Margalo found a note on the branch of her fern when she awoke. It said, beware of a strange cat who will come by night. It was signed a well-wisher. She kept the note under her wing all day, wondering what she had better do, but she didn't dare show it to anyone, not even Stuart. She couldn't eat. She was so frightened. What had I better do? She kept saying to herself. Finally, just before dark, she hopped up to an open window and without saying anything to anybody, she flew away. It was springtime, so she flew north, just as fast as she could fly, because something inside her told her that north was the way for a bird to go when spring comes to land. Okay, so the pigeon, who's kind of a stranger to Stuart and their family and everybody in their family, or even Margalo. She doesn't know the pigeon. They're not friends. But it was the pigeon who heard these two cats talking. And Snowbell said, I can't eat the bird that lives in my house, who's Margalo, because, I can't eat the bird because it will make my family upset. But the Angora cat says, oh, I can eat the bird for you. And that is what Snowbell agrees for. So the pigeon warns Margalo that danger is coming because of the cat. And so Margalo flies away because she's afraid, which makes sense. But she doesn't tell anyone that she's leaving and why. No one even knows why, but she's leaving. She left. Chapter 11, The Automobile. For 3 days, everybody hunted all over the house for Margalo without finding so much as a feather. I guess she had spring fever, said George. A normal bird doesn't stay indoors this kind of weather. Perhaps she has a husband somewhere and has gone to meet him, suggested Mr. Little. She has not, sobbed Stuart bitterly. That's just a lot of nonsense. How do you know? Asked George. Because I asked her one time, cried Stuart. She told me she was a single bird. Everybody questioned Snowbell closely, but the cat insisted he knew nothing about Margalo's disappearance. I don't see why you have to make a pariah out of me, just because that disagreeable little chippy flew the coop, said Snowbell irritably. Stuart was heartbroken. He had no appetite, refused food, and lost weight. Finally, he decided that he would run away from home without telling anybody and go into the world and look for Margalo. While I am about it, I might as well seek my fortune too, he thought. Before daybreak next morning, he got out his biggest handkerchief, and in it he placed his toothbrush, his money, his soap, his comb and brush, the clean suit of underwear, and his pocket compass. Before daybreak the next morning, he got out. Oops, I already read that part. I ought to take along something to remember my mother by, he thought. So he crept into his mother's bedroom where she was still asleep, climbed the lamp to her bureau, and pulled a strand of Mrs. Little's hair from her comb. He rolled the hair up neatly and laid it in the handkerchief with the other things. Then he rolled everything into a bundle and tied it onto the end of a wooden match. With his gray felt hat cocked jauntily on one side of his head and his pack slung over his shoulder, Stuart stole softly out of the house. "Goodbye, beautiful home," he whispered. "I wonder if I'll ever see you again." Stuart stood uncertainly for a moment in the street in front of his house. Do you see him there on the street? Let me circle Stuart so you can see him. Here he is. So small. The street is so big. Stuart stood uncertainly for a moment in the street in front of the house. The world was such a big place in which to go looking for a lost bird. North, south, east, or west, which way should he go? Stuart decided that he needed advice on such an important matter. So he started uptown to find his friend, Dr. Carey, the surgeon dentist, the owner of the schooner Wasp. Remember the man who let Stuart ride on his little boat, the Wasp? This is the man, Dr. Carey. That's that man. He became his friend, remember, because Stuart was the one that helped his boat win the race. The doctor was glad to see Stuart. He took him right into his inner office where he was busy pulling a man's tooth. Okay, sometimes the dentist has to pull your tooth out, right? We all have teeth and sometimes they have problems. And if it's a really bad problem, the doctor will just pull out the tooth. It's very painful, even if the doctor does his best. The man's name was Edward Clydesdale, and he had several wads of gauze in his cheek to hold his mouth open, good and wide. So that's what the dentist will do. Sometimes take some white stuff and put it inside your mouth to keep your mouth open so you can't close your mouth fully because it needs to take your top. Can you understand me? Probably hard. I was just saying he puts it in your mouth to hold your mouth open so that you can't close your mouth, because if you close your mouth, the doctor can't see, right? This is my friend, Stuart Little. Oh, sorry, I skipped a sentence. The tooth was a hard one to get out, and the doctor let Stuart sit on his instrument tray so that they could talk during the operation. "This is my friend, Stuart Little," he said to the man with the gauze in his mouth. "Har, doc," replied the man as best he could. "Very well, thank you," replied Stuart. "What's on your mind, Stuart?" asked Dr. Carey, seizing hold of the man's tooth with a pair of pincers and giving a strong pull. "I ran away from home this morning," explained Stuart. "I'm going out into the world to seek my fortune and to look for a lost bird. Which direction do you think I should start in?" Dr. Carey twisted a tooth and racked it back and forth. I think it should say rocked it back and forth. "What color is the bird?" he asked. "Brown," said Stuart. "Better go north," said Dr. Carey. "Don't you think so, Mr. Clydesdale?" said Mr. Clydesdale. "What?" cried Stuart. Said Mr. Clydesdale. "He says look in Central Park," explained Dr. Carey, tucking another big wad of gauze into Clydesdale's cheek. "And it's a good idea. It's a good suggestion. Often people with decayed teeth have sound ideas. Often people with decayed teeth have sound ideas. Central Park is a favorite place for birds in the spring." Now, friends, do you see this picture here? I put another picture of Central Park. Now, can you imagine for the birds living in a city like New York, they want to find some trees because it's in trees that birds like to build their nests. It's in the ground that birds like to find their food of worms and things like that. So of course, Central Park is a perfect place to look for a bird, especially if you're living in this city. So that's where Mr. Clydesdale says that Stuart should go, and the doctor agrees. Mr. Clydesdale was nodding his head vigorously and seemed about to speak again. It's so hard to do this. Ah, yeah. What? Cried Stuart, delighted at this new kind of talk. What say, Mr. Clydesdale? He says, if you don't locate the bird in Central Park, then take a New York, New Haven, and Hartford railway train and look in Connecticut, said Dr. Carey. Then he removed the rolls of gauze from Mr. Clydesdale's mouth. Rinse, please, he said. Mr. Clydesdale took a glass of mouthwash that was beside the chair and rinsed his mouth out. Okay, so did you hear what Mr. Clydesdale said? Maybe it was hard to understand the first few times because it was hard for me to say. He said, if you don't find the bird at the park, then you should take a train, the New York, New Haven train. Okay, now here on this map, I'm going to take my drawing tool and I'm going to use orange on this little map here. And I'm going to show you what he said to do. Take a train from New York and go up to New Haven. And if you go from New York to New Haven, like right here along this map, then you'll go from New York to Connecticut. And he said, you can just take the railway, which is the train, and that's where you should look for a bird. Because remember, they're giving Stuart ideas on where to go to look for Margalo. Okay. Tell me this, Stuart, said Dr. Carey. How are you traveling? On foot? Yes, sir, said Stuart. Well, I think you better have a car. As soon as I get this tooth out, we'll see what can be done about it. Open, please, Mr. Clydesdale. Dr. Carey grabbed the tooth with the pinchers once again, and this time he pulled so long and so hard and with such determination that the tooth popped out, which was a great relief to everybody, particularly to Mr. Clydesdale. Then the doctor led Stuart into another room. From a shelf, he took a tiny automobile, about 6 inches long, the most perfect miniature automobile Stuart had ever seen. It was bright yellow with black fenders and a streamlined car of graceful design. I made this myself, Dr. Carey said. I enjoy building model cars and boats and other things when I'm not extracting teeth. This car has a real gasoline motor in it. It has quite a great deal of power. Do you think you can handle it, Stuart? Isn't that interesting? Dr. Carey, he doesn't just build little boats, he also builds cars. And he built this car that's yellow, and he's offering it to Stuart to use for his journey. Certainly, replied Stuart, looking into the driver's seat and blowing the horn. Beep, beep. But isn't it going to attract too much attention? Won't everybody stop and stare at such a small automobile? They would if they could see you, replied Dr. Carey, but nobody will be able to see you or the car. Why not? Asked Stuart. Because this automobile is a thoroughly modern car. It's not only noiseless, it's invisible. Nobody can see it. I can see it, remarked Stuart. Push that little button, said the doctor, pointing to a button on the instrument panel. Stuart pushed the button. Instantly, the car vanished from sight. Now push it again, said the doctor. How can I push it when I don't see it? Asked Stuart. Feel around for it. So Stuart felt around until his hand came in contact with a button. It seemed like the same button, and Stuart pushed it. He heard a slight grinding noise and felt something slip out from under his hand. "Hey, watch out!" yelled Dr. Carey. "You pushed the starter button. She's off. There she goes. She's away. She's loose in the room. Now we'll never catch her." He grabbed Stuart up and placed him on the table where he wouldn't be hit by a runaway car. "Oh, mercy, oh, mercy," Stuart cried when he realized what he had done. It was a very awkward situation. Neither Dr. Carey nor Stuart could see the little automobile, yet it was rushing all over the room under its own power, bumping into things. First, came a crashing noise over by the fireplace. The hearth broom fell down. Dr. Carey leapt for the spot and pounced on the place where the sound had come from. But though he was quick, he hardly got his hands on the place when there was another crash over by the wastebasket. Now, do you see this picture here? This picture is of the wastebasket, or we would say the trash can. And the car, which is invisible because of the button that was pressed, the car hit it really hard and knocked it, but you can't see the car. You can only see the place where it was hit. You know, the dent and the damage in the can, and they don't know where the car is. The doctor pounced again. Pounce, crash, pounce, crash. The doctor was racing all over the room, pouncing and missing. It is almost impossible to catch a speedy, invisible automobile, even when one is a skillful dentist. Oh, yelled Stuart, jumping up and down. "I'm sorry, Dr. Carey. I'm dreadfully sorry." "Get a butterfly net," shouted the doctor. "I can't," said Stuart. "I'm not big enough to carry a butterfly net." "That's true," said Dr. Carey. "I forgot. My apologies, Stuart." "The car is bound to stop sometime," said Stuart, "because it will run out of gas." "That's true, too," said the doctor. And so he and Stuart sat down and waited patiently until they no longer heard any crashing sounds in the room. Then the doctor got down on his hands and knees and crawled cautiously all over, feeling here and there until at last he found the car. It was in the fireplace, buried up to its hubs in wood ashes. The doctor pressed the proper button, and there it stood in plain sight again, its fenders crumpled, its radiator leaking, its highlights broken, its windshield shattered, its right rear tire punctured, and quite a bit of yellow paint scratched off the hood. "What a mess," groaned the doctor. "Stuart, I hope this will be a lesson to you. Never push a button on an automobile unless you are sure of what you are doing." "Yes, sir," answered Stuart, his eyes filled with tears, each tear being smaller than a drop of dew. It had been an unhappy morning. Stuart was already homesick. He was sure that he was never going to see Margalo again. Chapter 12, and our last chapter for this evening. The schoolroom. I really like this chapter too, but I think it's because I'm a teacher, and school is something that I like. Maybe you like school too because you're a student. While Dr. Carey was making repairs on the car, Stuart went shopping. He decided that since he was about to take a long motor trip, he should have the proper clothes. He went to a doll's shop where they had things which were the right size for him, and outfitted himself completely with new luggage, suits, and shirts, and necessities. He charged everything and was well pleased with his purchases. That night, he slept at the doctor's apartment. That's nice. The doctor is letting him stay at his house. The next morning, Stuart started early to avoid traffic. He thought it would be a good idea to get on the road before there were too many cars and trucks. He drove through Central Park to 110th Street, and then over to the west side, then north to the Sawmill River Parkway. The car, sorry, one second, friends. Let me, I have to send a message because our meeting is about to time out. To time out. Okay. The next morning, Stuart started early to avoid traffic. He thought it would be a good idea to get out on the road before there were too many cars and trucks. He drove through Central Park to 110th Street, then over to the West Side Highway, then north to the Sawmill River Parkway. The car ran beautifully, and although people were inclined to stare at him, Stuart didn't mind. He was very careful not to press the button, which had caused so much trouble the day before. He made up his mind that he would never use that button again. Just as the sun was coming up, Stuart saw a man seated by the side of the road. Stuart steered his car alongside, stopped, and put his head out. "You're worried about something, aren't you?" asked Stuart. "Yes, I am," said the man, who was tall and mild. "Can I help you in any way?" asked Stuart in a friendly voice. The man shook his head. "It's an impossible situation, I guess," he replied. "You see, I'm the superintendent of schools in this town." "That's not an impossible situation," said Stuart. "It's bad, but it's not impossible." "Well," continued the man, "I've always got problems that I can't solve. Today, for instance, one of my teachers is sick. Miss Gunderson is her name. She teaches number 7 school. I've got to find a substitute for her. A teacher who will take her place." "What's the matter with her?" asked Stuart. "I don't know exactly. The doctor says she may have rhinestones," replied the superintendent. "Can't you find another teacher?" asked Stuart. "No, that's the trouble. There's nobody in this town who knows anything. No spare teachers, no anything. School is supposed to begin in an hour." "I will be glad to take Miss Gunderson's place for a day, if you would like," suggested Stuart agreeably. The superintendent of schools looked up. "Really?" "Certainly," said Stuart. "Glad to." He opened the door of the little car and stepped out. Walking around to the rear, he opened the baggage compartment and took out his suitcase. "If I'm to conduct a class in the schoolroom, I'd better take off these motoring tags and get into something more suitable," he said. Stuart climbed the bank, went into the bushes, and was back in a few minutes wearing a pepper and salt jacket, which just means it was black and white, old striped trousers, a Windsor tie, and spectacles, which are glasses. He folded his other clothes and packed them away in the suitcase. "Do you think you can maintain discipline?" Which means, do you think you can keep all the kids from being naughty? Asked the superintendent. "Of course I can," replied Stuart. "I'll make the work interesting and the discipline will take care of itself. Don't worry about me." The man thanked him and they shook hands. 9:15, the scholars had gathered in school number 7. When they missed Miss Gunderson and word got around that there would be a substitute, they were delighted. A substitute, somebody whispered to somebody else. A substitute, a substitute. The news traveled fast, and soon everyone in the school knew that they were all to have a rest from Mrs. Gunderson for at least a day, and were going to have a wonderful experience of being taught by a strange teacher whom nobody had ever seen before. Stuart arrived at 9. He parked his car briskly at the door of the school. Sorry, I lost my spot. Stalked boldly into the room, found a yardstick leaning against Miss Gunderson's desk, and climbed hand over foot to the top. There he found an inkwell, some pens and pencils, a bottle of ink, some chalk, a bell, 2 hairpins, and 3 and 4 books in a pile. Stuart scrambled nimbly up to the top of the stack of books, and jumped for the button on the bell. Do you see that gold bell there? Let me circle the bell. I have a picture of one of these in another slide, and it's silver, but this bell, if you press the top part, which is like this little bit, it will go ding, ding, ding. And a lot of teachers, especially in the old days, used to do that. They would press a bell, ding, to get all the students to be quiet. Instead of saying, okay, everybody start, they will just ding, ding. It's sort of old-fashioned. So Stuart finds that bell. On the desk, he found an inkwell, a pointer, some pens and pencils. Sorry, friends, I lost my spot. A bottle of ink, some chalk, a bell, 2 hairpins, and 3 or 4 books in a pile. Stuart scrambled nimbly to the top of the stack of books and jumped for the button on the bell. His weight was enough to make it ring, and Stuart promptly slid down, walked to the front of the desk, and said, "Let me have your attention, please." The boys and girls crowded around the desk to look at the substitute. Everyone talked at once, and they seemed to be very much pleased. The girls giggled, and the boys laughed, and everyone's eyes lit up with excitement to see such a small and good-looking teacher, so appropriately dressed. "Let me have your attention, please," repeated Stuart. "As you know, Miss Gunderson is sick, and I am taking her place." "What's the matter with her?" asked Roy Hart eagerly. "Vitamin trouble," replied Stuart. "She took vitamin D when she needed vitamin A. She took B when she was sort of C, and her system became overloaded with riboflavin, thiamine hydrochloride, and even with paradoxine, and the need for which is human nutrition has not been established. Let it be a lesson for all of us." He glared fiercely at the children, and they made no more inquiries about Mrs. Gunderson. "Everyone will now take his or her seat," commanded Stuart. The pupils filed obediently down the aisles and dropped into their seats. And in a moment, there was silence in the classroom. Stuart cleared his throat. Seizing a coat lapel in either hand to make himself look like a professor, Stuart began. "Anybody absent?" The scholars shook their heads. "Anybody late?" They shook their heads. "Very well," said Stuart. "What's the first subject you usually take up in the morning?" "Arithmetic," shouted the children, which is mathematics, that we call it mathematics. "Bother arithmetic," snapped Stuart. "Let's skip it." There were wild shouts of enthusiasm. Woohoo! At this suggestion, everyone in the class seemed perfectly willing to skip arithmetic for one morning. "What next do you study?" asked Stuart. "Spelling!" cried the children. "Well," said Stuart, "a misspelled word is an abomination in the sight of everyone. I consider it a very fine thing to spell words correctly, and I strongly urge every one of you to buy a Webster's Collegiate Dictionary and consult it. whenever you are in the slightest doubt. Okay, so what Stuart said is don't study spelling. That's not what you need. What you need is if you're not sure how to spell a word, look it up in this dictionary, which is a book that has many, many words in it and even tells you what the words mean. Okay, so much for spelling. What's next? The scholars were just as pleased to be let out of spelling as they were about arithmetic. And they shouted for joy, woohoo! And everybody looked at everybody else and laughed and waved handkerchiefs and rulers. And some of the boys threw spitballs at some of the girls. Stuart had to climb up to a pile of books again and dive for the bell to restore order. Ding, 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 ding. Shh. What's next? He repeated. Writing, cried the scholars. Goodness, said Stuart in disgust. Don't you children know how to write yet? Certainly we do, yelled one and all. So much for that then, said Stuart. Social studies comes next, cried Elizabeth Gardner eagerly. Social studies? Never heard of them, said Stuart. Instead of taking up any special subject this morning, why wouldn't it be good if we just talked about something? The scholars glanced around at each other in expectancy. Could we talk about the way it feels to hold a snake in your hand and then winds itself around your wrist? Asked Arthur Greenlaw. We could, but I'd rather not, replied Stuart. Could we talk about sin and vice? Pleaded Lydia Lacey. Nope, said Stuart. Try again. Could we talk about the fat woman at the circus and she had hair all over her chin? Begged Isidore Feinberg reminiscently. No, said Stuart. I'll tell you. Let's talk about the king of the world. He looked around the room hopefully to see how the children liked that idea. There isn't any king of the world, said Harry Jameson in disgust. What's the diff? Said Stuart. There ought to be one. Kings are old-fashioned, said Harry. Well, all right then. Let's talk about the chairman of the world. The world gets into a lot of trouble because it has no chairman. I would like to be chairman of the world myself. You're too small, said Mary Bendix. Oh, fish feathers, said Stuart. Size has nothing to do with it. It's temperament and ability that count. The chairman has to have the ability, and he must know what's important. How many of you know what's important? Up went all the hands. Very good, said Stuart, cocking one leg across the other and shoving his hands in the pocket of his jacket. Henry Reckmeyer, you tell us what is important. A shaft of sunlight at the end of a dark afternoon, a note in music, and the way the back of a baby's neck smells if a mother keeps it tidy, answered Henry. Correct, said Stuart. Those are important things. Can you see these pictures here, friends? Look at this one. Do you see the sky is very dark, but there's one place where the clouds open up and it's like a line of light is coming out. We would call that a shaft of light. And Henry is saying that's important. Henry also said that a note in music is important and the smell of the back of a baby's neck if a mother keeps it tidy, which is an interesting thing to say. I think he just means when a baby's clean. Smells very good. Correct, said Stuart. Those are important things. But you forgot one thing, though. Mary Bendix, what did Henry Rackenmeyer forget? He forgot ice cream with chocolate sauce on it, said Mary quickly. Exactly. Ice cream is important. I agree with this. I don't know about you. Well, now, if I'm going to be chairman of the world this morning, We've got to have some rules. Otherwise, it will be too confusing. With everyone running every which way and helping himself to things and nobody behaving. We've got to have some laws if we're going to play this game. Can anybody suggest any good laws for the world? Albert Fernstrom raised his hand. Don't eat mushrooms. They might be toadstools, suggested Albert. That's not a law, said Stuart. That's merely a bit of friendly advice. Very good advice, Albert, but advice and law are not the same. Now, friends, look at these pictures down here. Do you see this? This one's a mushroom. The yellowish one is a mushroom, and then the one beside it is a toadstool. These are things you will find growing in nature, and you know what? If you eat the mushroom, nothing will happen to you. But if you eat the toadstool, you might die because they're poisonous. It could hurt you. So this was just a piece of advice that Albert was giving. You shouldn't eat the red kind. Law is much more solemn or serious than advice. Law is extremely solemn. Anybody else think of a law for the world? Nix on swiping anything, suggested John Poldowski solemnly. Very good, said Stuart. Good law. Swiping means stealing things from other people. Never poison anything but rats, said Anthony Bridisi. That's no good, said Stuart. That's unfair to rats. A law has to be fair to everybody. Anthony looked sulky. But rats are unfair to us, he said. Rats are objectionable. I know they are, said Stuart, but from a rat's point of view, poison is objectionable. A chairman has to see all sides of a problem. Have you got a rat's point of view? Asked Anthony. You look like a rat. Now, do you see down here this picture? One is a rat and one is a mouse. Stuart is a mouse, so Stuart is smaller than a rat. Stuart is not a rat, he's a mouse, right? So sometimes it's hard for people to tell the difference. Here's a mouse, and then this one is a rat. And even though the kids say they don't like rats and they want to poison rats because they think rats are bad, Stuart says, no, you can't do that. That's not fair to the rats. I guess that because Stuart is similar to a rat, that he cares about rats too, you know. No, replied Stuart. I have more the point of view of a mouse, which is very different. I see things whole. It's obvious to me that rats are underprivileged. They've never been able to get out in the open. Rats don't like the open, said Agnes Baratesca. That's because whenever they come out, somebody sucks them. Rats might like the open if they were allowed to use it. Any other ideas for laws? Agnes Baratesca raised her hand. There ought to be a law against fighting. Impractical, said Stuart. Men like to fight. But you're getting warm, Agnes. No scrapping? Asked Agnes timidly. Stuart shook his head. Absolutely no being mean, suggested Mildred Hoffenstein. Very fine law, said Stuart. When I am chairman, anybody who is mean to anybody else is going to catch it. That won't work, remarked Herbert Prendergast. Some people are just naturally mean. Albert Fernstrom is always being mean to me. I'm not saying it'll work, said Stuart. It's a good law and we'll give it a try. We'll give it a try right here, right now. Somebody do something mean to somebody. Harry Jameson, you'd be mean to Catherine Stableford. Wait a minute now. What's that you've got in your hand, Catherine? It's a tiny little pillow stuffed with sweet balsam. Okay, friends, let me teach you about something. See the picture of this green plant? That is balsam. It's a kind of tree. And you know what people will do? they will take these tree parts. It's like tree needles, or it's basically the kind of leaves that this kind of tree grows. And what they'll do is they'll cut it up in very, very small bits and dry it out in the sun, and then put it into a little pillow. Just, you see that picture beside with all these little pillows? And now you're thinking, why are they making a pillow out of something that comes off of a tree? And that's because those little pillows will keep different, like mosquitoes, moths, mice. They'll keep pests away, but they will also make you feel better if you have a headache. So this little girl might have one of those balsam pillows because it can help you with a headache. Maybe that's why she took it to school. So she has this little pillow on it. And she really likes it. Does it say, "For you I pine, for you I balsam" on it? Yes, said Catherine. Do you love it very much? Asked Stuart. Yes, I do, said Catherine. Okay, Harry, grab it. Take it away. Harry ran over to where Catherine sat, grabbed a little pillow from her hand, and ran back to his seat. While Catherine screamed, "No!" Now then, said Stuart in a fierce voice, hold on, my good people, while your chairman consults the book of rules. He pretended to thumb through a book. Here we are. Page 492, absolutely no being mean. Page 560, nix on swiping anything. Henry Jameson has broken 2 laws, the law against being mean and the law against swiping. Let's get Harry and set him back before he becomes so mean that people will hardly recognize him anymore. Come on. Stuart ran for the yardstick and slid down like a fireman coming down a pole in the firehouse. He ran toward Harry, and the other children jumped up from their seats and raced up and down the aisles and crowded around Harry while Stuart demanded that he give up the little pillow. Harry looked frightened. Although he knew it was just a test, gave Catherine the pillow. There, it worked pretty well, said Stuart. No being mean is a perfectly good law. He wiped his face with his handkerchief, for he was quite warm from the exertion of being chairman of the world. It had taken more running and leaping and sliding than he had imagined. Catherine was very much pleased to have her pillow back. Let's see that little pillow in a minute, said Stuart, whose curiosity was beginning to get the better of him. Catherine showed it to him. It was about as long as Stuart was high, and Stuart suddenly thought what a fine, sweet-smelling bed it would make for him. He began to want the pillow himself. That's a very pretty thing, said Stuart, trying to hide his eagerness. You don't want to sell it, do you? Oh, no, replied Catherine. It was a present to me. I suppose it was given to you by a boy you met at Lake Hapatcong last summer, and it reminds you of him, murmured Stuart dreamily. Yes, it was, said Catherine, blushing. Ah, said Stuart. Summers are wonderful, aren't they, Catherine? Now, everybody see this picture here of the water? This picture of water is a real place called Lake. It's called Lake Hapatcong. I'm not sure how to say it, but it's near New York City. It's in New Jersey, which is very nearby. And people in New York might like to go on a holiday there or vacation. And so that place with the water, that's a real lake. And that little girl, Catherine, she'd gone there for a trip with her family in the summer, and she made a new friend, which was a boy, and the boy gave her gifts. And she probably, liked the boy, thought he was very nice. And when he gave her a gift, it just made her feel so good. So this gift is very special to her because it's her memories of being at the lake with that boy that was her friend. Summers are wonderful, aren't they, Catherine? Yes, and last summer was the most wonderful summer I ever had in all my life. I can imagine, replied Stuart. You sure you wouldn't want to sell that little pillow? Catherine shook her head. Don't know as I blame you, replied Stuart quietly. Summertime is important. It's like a shaft of sunlight. Or a note in music, said Elizabeth Atkinson. Or the way the back of a baby's neck smells if a mother keeps it tidy, said Marilyn Roberts. Stuart sighed. Never forget your summer times, my dears, he said. Well, I've got to be getting along. It's been a pleasure to know you all. Class is dismissed. Stuart strode rapidly to the door, climbed to the car, and with a final wave of the hand, drove off in the northerly direction while the children raced alongside and screamed, "Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye." They all wished they could have a substitute every day instead of Mrs. Gunderson. Now, friends, I really like something that Stuart was saying to the kids. He said, don't forget your summer times. What he means is, don't forget the things that make you happy and the things that are important to you and you think are wonderful. And summertime at the lake was something that this little girl really loved. And so that was making her feel good when she thought about it. And so right now, as we're all stuck at home and there's so many things that might make us sad or upset, I want to encourage you to think about your summer times. And those are just the things that make you happy, make you feel good. And that's what I'm trying to do. For me, I love my dogs. My dogs are my summer times. You know what? Chocolate is also my summertime. And you know what else is my summertime? My family. And I get to talk to my family. That's my summertime. And I love my fish that I have at my house. They're my summertime too. These are just my summer times. These are the things that make me happy, make me feel wonderful. And you know, summertime is coming. It is. Our real summertime is coming when the weather's going to be warm and we're all going to be outside playing in the park. It's coming and I'm excited for that summertime. So now to finish our little group tonight, our little session, story time, I'm going to show you a video. It's a little bit long and you don't have to stay and watch the whole thing if you don't want to. But this place, this Lake Hapagtong that was mentioned in the book, like I said, it's a real place. And remember, I told you that this story was written like 75 years ago, which is a long time. And the people that live in New York City, they still love to go to the lake. And the people even 75 years ago, when E.B. White wrote this book, they loved to go. So I'm going to show you a video of some people playing outside in the summertime. There's even some videos of them playing many years ago at Lake Hapagtong that was mentioned in the book. So you can see what it was really like and what the man who wrote the book, what he had in his mind when he was writing it. Now, these are not famous people in the video. In fact, these are just random people. I don't know their names. I don't know anything about them, but they're family and they're having fun in the summertime many years ago. And I think it's a really cool thing to watch. Just like I showed you in the video with the boats, there's no sound in this video, which means you can't hear it, right? But can you see me? Yeah. But I think you'll still enjoy it. And you can just learn a lot by even just watching and thinking about the people in the video and maybe how they were feeling. I know they were feeling happy. And I hope that it will make you happy too, just by watching some people smiling and doing things. Maybe you like to do the same things, okay? Let's enjoy. Like I said, if you think it's too boring, it's okay. You can leave the meeting. But if anybody is wanting to watch, you're welcome to stay. You can tell it was an old camera. An old camera because the picture isn't quite clear. But you can see these kids doing things that they love. This little girl's blowing bubbles. Outside in the summertime. Those boys are playing with a wagon. Looks like they're fighting. That happens sometimes. You know, these videos, it's just like what it looked like when my mom was a little girl. So it's interesting for me to learn about that too. Still playing with the wagon. Some of the things that you can notice is the clothes that these kids wear. If you think their clothes are just like the clothes you wore when you were little like this, or maybe you're still little. Look, they're kissing their granny, their grandma, giving her some kisses. Playing bubbles on the porch. In the summertime, we like to wear cool clothing because the weather's so hot, right? We don't wear lots and lots of sweaters because it's so much more comfortable and free. Right. This boy is climbing a rock. Jump. He's having fun. This girl has a bouncy ball. Bounce, bounce. Oh, this is a wiffle ball. My family used to play this game. It's like baseball. I don't think the ball is actually too hard though, so it's a little more safe. And chase it, try to hit it. Somebody's the thrower, somebody is the batter. The batter is the person that hits it with the stick. And this girl's really good at throwing the ball up and catching it again. This looks like the playground. We have playgrounds at the parks in Shanghai, don't we? But these playgrounds were the old kind of playgrounds, and you know what? Not very safe. It's just metal bars. If you fall down and hit your head on that, you will be hurt. But these kids are being careful and they're having fun climbing. Oh, she's gonna swing upside down. That's a trick I liked to do when I was little. Down the slide, the metal slide. The slides we have are made of plastic, and plastic is better because plastic doesn't get too hot in the summertime, but metal does. I can remember going down a metal slide and thinking, ooh, that was hot. That hurt my leg. Climbing a tree. I bet some of you like to climb trees, and I know that's what you're gonna do when you can go outside in the summer. Rolling in the grass down the hill. This is very fun, but it might make you feel dizzy and itchy. Look at this little squirrel. He's just happily going along, maybe looking for food. Now this one is like the dad is teaching the kids to bike, to use the bicycle. This girl knows how to do it by herself already. But see, look, the dad is teaching the other kid here. You can see that the little girl doesn't know what to do yet. She's learning. She feels scared, I think. I bet some of you have just learned how to ride a bike by yourself. And some of you are still learning, and some of you are going to learn this summer. I bet that's going to happen. You're going to practice. This guy is washing the car. That's a fun thing to do in the summer. When I was little, I loved to put on my bathing suit and go outside and spray water on the cars and get all wet and get the soap on myself. And we would just play in the water. And we wash the cars. Look, here is another tree climbing part. See, the camera is old, like I said, so the colors, sometimes it changes a color. It's not clear, but you can see they're in the tree. Climbing a tree is a very fun thing to do. You have to be careful, but doesn't it feel good when you reach up high and swing? I love swinging too. I bet you do too, some of you. My dad, when I was young, he tied a swing in the branches of the trees in my house, and I could swing outside in the summer. Grandma was having some food and Grandpa's reading the newspaper. Mhm. Trees are so wonderful. This is the mom and the dad. Time to go swimming again. Swimming in the lake, jumping off the dock into the water. I bet some of you have learned how to dive and you know how to do tricks like flips or jumps. They have a wooden diving board and down into the water. That's a great fun thing to do. I love swimming. I'm really excited to go swimming again in the summertime. I used to feel nervous about swimming in lakes because of the fish in the water, but I'm not afraid anymore. I just have to remind myself that the fish will not hurt me. But I always still feel nervous that the fish is going to try to bite my foot. It's never happened though. I just still be afraid. I'm still afraid of that. Now this girl looks like she must be in some sort of club where they earn little badges for your uniform. This is something that some kids do. It's if you can learn how to do things, they'll give you a special pin. And it looks like she's letting her dad take a video of her. Whoops. Someone's calling me. Decline. Can you guys still see the video? No? Sorry. Let me get back to it. All right. Oh, that was the end. That was the end, friends. Thank you so much for joining me. And this class was a little bit long. Remember your summer times. Don't forget about your summer times. Everyone hold on. I know this is not easy time for any of us. I'm feeling sad sometimes, and I bet you are too, but summer is coming, and we can all be excited about that, all right? Bye, friends. Thank you for joining. Don't forget, come back on Friday night to hear our last chapters, okay? We'll finish the book. Bye-bye. Thanks again.